Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, thank you. It's 8 p.m. on a school night. Probably not your ideal thing to be doing is doing a bit of formative assessment, but fingers crossed we're going to make it as worthwhile as possible. Iris, what we got lined up tonight?
Okay, today Craig is going to give you a quick tour about diagnostic questions and, of course, all about them, the ins and outs of the misconceptions. And then I'm going to take you on a journey on how to learn how to get set up and, of course, discovering the eedi platform as well.
Seamless, that Iris. Seamless. Very nice. Okay, right. So let's kick things off. What is a diagnostic question? So diagnostic questions are the kind of bedrock of both the diagnostic questions website and the eedi website. And Iris will be talking about the differences and diving deep into the platform after I've finished rambling on. But to kick things off, just take a look at this diagnostic question. It's one of my current favorites, this one. And what I'd like you to do, just on your own, just for a minute or so, decide what you think the right answer is. And then if you had to say, which of the others do you think is the most popular wrong answer? So maybe imagine a class that you may give this to. Which do you reckon is the most popular wrong answer out of the remaining ones? I'm going to shut up for a few seconds, then I'll tell you why I'm asking you this. Okay, let's go for it. So if my maths is right, and this could be embarrassing, I think A is the correct answer with 85%. But each of B, C, and D reveal a specific misconception. So B is an interesting one. B, 94%. Where does that come from? Well, if we look at Trisha here, she got 34 out of 40. She's dropped 6 marks. So students assume 6 marks, 6%. Let's take 6% off 100. We're left with 94%. Then we've got C. C's a classic. Let's ignore that 40. It doesn't matter what it's out of. I've seen 34 marks, 34%. And then you get D. D's a weird one. Well, where's 68% come from? Well, when you dive into student explanations, and I'm going to talk all about student explanations very soon, it's fascinating. Students talk about the fact that they realize that it's not 34 out of 100. But it's 34 out of something less than 100. And their natural default is to double it up. 34 becomes 68%. Now, why would they do that? Well, students talk about the fact that they're so used to things being out of 50, and they get so ingrained that when something's out of 50, you double it up, that they're just doubling up things left, right, and center. And 40 doesn't quite double up to 100 as nice as 50 does. It's not a factor of 100. So they kind of do what they've been used to doing. If kids are used to being presented with really nice denominators to deal with fractions converting to percentages, you get these kind of misconceptions. Now, in fact, this question's been answered over 4,000 times on the platform. And you can see there it's a relatively poorly answered question. Sure, 2/3 of kids get it right, but that's 1/3 of all kids who are getting this question wrong. B is the most popular one, as we discussed, just taking that 6 off, followed by C, but then 1 in 20 kids is going to make this mistake of just assuming they can double this up. Why am I showing you all this is the question possibly on your lips. And that's because it shows why I enjoy diagnostic questions and why I feel they're so important in my armory of formative assessment. And that's because when a student answers one, I don't just learn that they've either got it right or wrong. Dependent on their choice of answer and possibly the explanation they give, I get a window into their mind as to why they've got it wrong. And it's when I know why students have got things wrong that I'm in a much stronger position to be able to help them. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the first part of tonight, learning things about why students are wrong. And then crucially, armed with that information, what can we do as a teacher? And then Iris is going to show you where you can get all this data from yourself and a load more besides. So let's play a game. Now, the way this game works, I'm going to show you 3 questions that I've chosen from one of our schemes of work. And my challenge to you out of these 3 questions is, first off, what's the worst answered question? So that's your first challenge. And then we're going to go through each question in turn, and I'm going to see if you can identify the most popular choice of wrong answer. Now, where have I got these questions from? Well, I've gone into one of our schemes of work, the eedi GCSE Foundation scheme. Now, if you're a primary colleague, don't be panicking. I've purposely chosen one that fits into year 6 and possibly even year 5, I think, some of these questions. So hopefully everybody can get involved in this. So I've gone for the eedi GCSE Foundation Powers and Roots quiz. And I've chosen 3 questions, but I've not just chosen any old 3 questions. I've chosen the worst 3 answered questions from the thousands of kids who've answered this quiz on the site. So they're the 3 questions. And my first challenge is, which of those, is it question 1, is it question 2, is it question 3, is the worst answered? Now, where I want you to put your answer is not on the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen, but if you click to the polls tab, you will see a poll. And Iris has set up which is the worst answered question. There's option 1, option 2, option 3. And when you're ready and you've decided, I'd like you to vote there. And I'm going to put a minute on the clock. Click onto the polls tab on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see which is the worst answered question. Make your choice. Big cash prizes are not really on offer, but let's assume that they are, just to provide a bit of an incentive. Can anybody identify this? What the most popular, what the worst answered question is? So I'm going to shut up for a minute or so. Take your time. And when you're ready, make your choice. Good luck. Okay, so we've had 2 people who've registered their votes so far, and now they're flying in. Now the numbers are racking up. Well, this is interesting. Bit of a runaway favourite at the moment amongst you. Another 30 seconds left. We've got 25 people in this webinar. So, and 12 of you have answered so far. So that's 13 of you just kind of holding fire for now, ready to pounce. 15 seconds on the clock. 10 seconds. I reckon there's still another 8 of you just poised, ready to vote. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so to build up a bit of tension, I'm going to reveal these questions in reverse order. So the first question I'm going to show you out of these 3 is the least worst answered question. And it is, drum roll, that question, the question on roots. So now my challenge is to you. I reckon the correct answer to that is D. I reckon option D does not give an integer answer. My challenge to you is, and again, if you go to the poll tab, again, Iris will make this magically appear. Out of the other 3 options, A, B, and C, what do you reckon is the most popular choice of wrong answer? Imagine your kids are answering this. If they go wrong, where are they going to go wrong? Is it option A, option B, or option C? When you're ready, make your choice. Okay, the answers are flying in again. Still 30 seconds on the clock. Well, what are kids going to do? Where are they going to go wrong? $15 seconds. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so just before I reveal all, let's have a look what you've gone for. So 35% of you have gone for option B, 65% of you have gone for option C, and nobody reckons it's option A. So let's have a look at this, because this fascinates me, the data on this. So here we go. Now, this is, just to bear in mind, we're talking a decent sample size here. Over 4,000 students have answered this question. So first thing to say is, look, only 48% of kids get this right. 52% of students are making a mistake on this question. The next thing to notice is we can't rule out any of these wrong answers, any of the misconceptions they reveal, because there are students going for A who are struggling with square roots. There are students who are going for B who either have an issue with root 64 or cube root of 8. And then the most popular, as identified by some of you there, 1 in 4 students think C does not give an integer answer. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I think this is an important exercise, and Iris is going to show you how you can do this nationally or just for your specific class. Because now I'm armed with this information. I've not done any teaching of this. Imagine I'm about to teach powers and roots to perhaps my year 7s or year 8s or whoever it might be. But now I've got this information before I go into the classroom. So the first thing I'm saying to myself is, this is a troublesome question, so I better make sure I ask this to my students. Because if I don't and I don't tackle this, my kids are going to be in the 52% who get this wrong. So that's the first thing. It alerts me to troublesome questions. But it's not just that, because now I can go in armed with information of where kids are likely to go wrong. So I need to think to myself, all right, kids are likely to pick C for this. So then the next question I ask myself is why? Why on earth would they pick C? Well, let's have a look at a typical explanation. Those of you who've used the Diagnostic Questions or eedi website or app will know that when kids are asked to provide an answer, they're also prompted to give an explanation. And it's these explanations that provide a window into the minds of students. So I've grabbed a typical explanation from a child who answered C. Just have a read of that. Now, this fascinates me, because I'll be honest with you, my instinct was, when I saw the data on this, I thought it's the root 27 that's causing the issue here. But it's not at all. The more explanations I read for this question, the more I see it's root 1 that's causing the problems. So imagine I'm the teacher and I've now got this information. I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to make sure my kids don't fall into that trap? Well, one thing I'm going to do is something I think I've been guilty of in the past, and that's not putting enough emphasis on the weird roots. So the root 1, the root 0, cube root 1, square root 1, cube root 0, square root 0. I think a lot of my emphasis is on things like cube root of 8, cube root of 27, a cube root of 64. Whereas we know just instinctively, and also the data on DQs backs this up across tons of questions, anytime a 0 or a 1 comes into play, it messes kids up big time. So to cut a long story short, when I see data like this, I say to myself, first off, I better make sure I ask the kids this question. Secondly, I better go in with an idea of why kids might go wrong. And thirdly, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to preempt that? How am I going to convince students that in fact C is wrong and B is wrong and A is wrong? So I'd rather do my thinking before the lesson than do my thinking on my feet in front of 30 expectant eyes. All right, so that's the first one. What's the second worst answered question? It's this one, the volume one, the volume of a cube. So my challenge to you is the same. I think the correct answer to this one is D. I think that's the volume of that cube. Iris has fired up in the poll section. She's put a poll for this one. So your challenge is the same again. What's the most popular wrong answer? Is it A? Is it B? Or is it C? Take your time. What are you going to go for there? Try and picture what might your students do? Okay, 10 of you have voted so far. Welcome to those who've just joined. I see a few more have just joined us on the webinar. If you click to the polls tab on the right-hand side, you can play a bit of a game of Guess the Misconception. What's the most popular wrong answer to this question? Is it A, is it B, or is it C? I'll give you another 15 seconds or so. Okay, 5 seconds on the clock. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so just before I reveal this one, let's try and preempt these misconceptions. If a child answered A, why would they answer A? Well, A, 225 is 15 times 15. So is that confusing, the formulas for area and volume? Is it a misremembering? And if so, what would we do about that? B's a weird one. Now, only 10% of you reckon that the kids are going to go for B here. Where would B come from? 90. Well, 90 is 15 multiplied by 6. The cube's got 6 faces. So is this student muddling up surface area and volume in a weird kind of way, thinking that 15 represents the area of a face? And if you do all 6 faces, then you've got the volume of a cube. Now, we've got problems with that. So again, if our kids do that, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to convince them that that's wrong? And then we've got C, which 57% of you reckon is the most popular wrong answer, 45. Now, 45 is 15 times 3. So is this students thinking, well, volume is to do with 3 lots or something, instead of realizing it's 15 times 15 times 15? Well, let's look at the data. So the first alarm bell, look at that. Only 46% of students get this question right. So again, in my head, this is a question I need to be asking my students. And of the 3 wrong answers, it's pretty uniform. 21% for A, 15 for B, 19 for C. All 3 of them have got to be considered. Even B, that 90, you're going to have a chunk of kids in your class who are going to go for that, who think that's the volume of the cube. So we've got to be armed and ready for this. But let's look at A. That's the most popular misconception. 1 in 5 students going for that. I've grabbed a common explanation from a child who went for A. Just have a read of that. So this is a student who has mistaken the way of calculating area with the way of calculating volume. They've muddled them up. Now, when I get some information like this, I think to myself, why might that have happened? And what can I do to prevent it happening to my kids? And again, often this leads to facing some hard truths for myself, because in the past, what I've done is I've taught area in a nice tidy little box, put a bow on it. Then I've taught volume in a nice tidy little box, put a bow on it. And the thing is, kids get really good at area. And then we move on to volume later on, and kids get really good at volume. But at no point have I challenged them to distinguish between the two. I've had no emphasis on method selection. And if kids can't distinguish between the two, when to use one versus when to use the other, if everything's just presented in nice tidy little boxes, so it's the same method every time, then students fall into this trap. They mistake algorithms, they misremember procedures, and so on and so forth. So now I've got this information. The first thing I'm going to do is ask my kids this. And secondly, I'm going to be thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to convince them that A is wrong? And how am I going to teach this topic in a way that gets them better at distinguishing between these two related concepts? All right, let's look at the final one. Many of you predicted this was the worst answered question. I mean, it's a fascinating one, this, because again, on the surface, it shouldn't be that bad, right? But wait till you see the statistics on this. This is scary. So my challenge to you for the final time tonight, Iris has fired up the poll in the polls tab. I reckon D's the right answer here. I reckon option 2 and option 3 are the only ones that would correctly on a calculator work out the square of -7. So my challenge to you is, what's the most popular wrong answer? It's the final one tonight. Imagine if we were playing for something serious here. There would be big pressure, but we're not, but let's pretend we are. So what are you going to go for here? A, B, or C for the final time? Good luck. Interesting. We've got a kind of two-way split between choice of most popular answers. About half of you have voted now. Still time for the rest of you. Big pressure, the final one of the evening. I'm going to put 15 seconds on the clock. 5 seconds on the clock. 3, 2, 1. Now, just before, again, just to build up tension a bit more, just before I reveal the answers, this I feel is a super useful exercise to do with two groups of people. One is fellow teachers. So imagine you're teaching, whether it be powers and roots or negative numbers or whatever. Imagine that's coming up in your year 7 scheme of work or year 8 scheme of work, or imagine you're a year 6 and a year 5 teacher, you sit together, play this game, and Iris is going to show you where you can get all this data from. One of you chooses a troublesome question and you say this: where do we think kids are going to go wrong? What are we going to do with that information? That's the big one. Where are they going to go wrong? Why are they going to go wrong? What are we going to do with that information? The other group of people this is super useful to do, of course, is the students themselves. Getting them to get inside the minds of other students. Where might other students go wrong and why might they go wrong? Get students really good at their mathematical communication. All these nasty exam questions, discuss, describe, evaluate, that kids struggle with. This for me is a super useful way to get kids thinking about that and communicating. And kids seem to really enjoy it. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Now, I warned you this was scary. 36% of students get this one right. The most popular wrong answer, as 35% of you identified, was A, followed by B, again, pretty close, and followed by C. We can't discount any of these as misconceptions. So let's just go through these briefly in reverse order. C, where does C come from? So C is 4 only. So that's mistaking squaring and doubling. Multiplying by 2 versus squaring, a specific misconception. But what's interesting to me is both B and A have the same misconception at the heart of them. They both include option 1 here, -7 squared. The only difference is students choosing B don't realize that -7 multiplied by -7 is also -7 squared. But the big issue is this, that -7 squared, bang that into a calculator, students assume you get the right answer. read this explanation. Are you ready to have your heart broken? Here it comes. Read this from a student who answered A. There's a line in that makes me want to burst into tears. Look at that. Because the brackets don't really do anything. The brackets don't really do anything. The brackets are the key to this. But again, I've got to take a long, hard look at myself when I see this kind of data. I think, have I ever taught this in a way that my students would fall into that trap? And I think I have, you know, because I don't think I put enough emphasis on calculator use. I tend to assume either kids are decent with the calculator, so they don't have to practice, or I focus all that practice on the trickier stuff, like doing trig on the calculator or doing the quadratic formula and so on. Do I put enough emphasis on using negative numbers on the calculator, operations with negative numbers? I don't think I do. And for me now, calculator use needs to be interwoven into as many different topics as possible, as I would do with something like place value or negative numbers or decimals. I try and build them into my teaching. Well, I need to build calculator use into my teaching. Every topic I teach now, I try to find a way to get the kids to practice that topic using the calculator, so they're getting comfortable with this incredibly important mathematical instrument. And again, we can see from this that students simply aren't. They've not had experience of playing around with this. So it's one thing, where are kids going wrong? We've identified that. Why are they going wrong? Well, they don't know about the importance of the bracket. And then what are we going to do about it? How are we going to teach our students in a way that they're not going to make that mistake? And that, for me, is the importance of this kind of data. And bear in mind, this is before we've even tapped into the treasure trove of what is our own kids' data. This is before we teach, and it's what I call planning for error. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to my colleague Iris, who's going to show you how you can do all this and plenty more besides on eedi. Now, as a warning, Iris is going to give you tons of information, but fear not. Two pieces of good news for you. First off, we're recording this webinar, so we can send this to you afterwards, so you can watch it back at your own time, pause it, do whatever you want. And Iris is also going to provide you with some lovely free guides that'll take you step by step through some of the main things that you need to be able to do. So without further ado, you'll be sick of my voice by now. I'm going to hand over to Iris. Enjoy it. And what's going to happen, I'll be back at the end along with Iris. And if you've got any questions based on what Iris has said, you'll notice there's a questions tab on the right-hand side. Bang your questions down there. Hopefully Iris will cover most of them, but if not, we'll be back at the end to answer any of them that have gone unresolved. Whew, that's enough from me. Iris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Craig, and I hope you've all enjoyed that so far. So what I'm hopefully going to give everybody now is a quick tour of eedi and show you actually how you can access some of the data that Craig has already showcased. So the first thing is, sadly, we don't have Craig here to talk over every single misconception for every single question. But what we do have is actually written misconceptions behind the question. So we supply those with every single one of our eedi questions. But how do you actually get to that point where you see the misconceptions and, of course, where you see the spread of data? So there's a small bit of setup. And once you've done the setup, which I'm going to show you in a second, you can access thousands of students' worth of data. You can see the misconceptions and you can see how they're likely to occur. So you can, of course, plan for error and try and accommodate those before you even walk into the classroom. So let me show you how you get there. So the first piece of setup is your scheme of work. Now, this takes about 20 minutes, but you don't have to set up the whole thing. You could say, I'm going to set up 6 weeks of my scheme of work, and you would then get that fantastic feature. So what actually is our scheme of work? So I'm asking you to set something up, and you may have never seen it. So let's say, for example, you're teaching powers and roots next week. What will happen is we embed 2 quizzes into the powers and roots topic. And one goes out as soon as you finish teaching. So we're saying, have the students understood what they were taught? Have they got any misconceptions? But we also have an automated quiz that goes out 3 weeks later. Have the students retain that information, or have they exposed any different misconceptions over time? So both those quizzes are automated through our platform. And as I mentioned, you may want to just add 6 topic units in and just do that first half term to have a taste of what our platform's like. But how do you know then, what scheme of works we even have available? So For GCSEs, we've partnered with AQA, EdXL and OCR, so we've got their schemes of work, but we've also got our very own eedi scheme of work that was created by Craig. The eedi scheme of work is most flexible. We've got an abundance of topic units, and you can kind of mix the higher and foundation topics if you do have some kind of intermediate level classes, and create one that's bespoke to your school. And we've also got White Rose and AET for primary school and Key Stage 3 as well. Again, you can adapt those. Of course, they are mastery, so they are in a recommended order, but you do have the flexibility. We've also got computing, and with another couple of projects we're working on, we've got mathematics mastery. And if anybody here is from a college in the Centres for Excellence program, we have a scheme of work available for you as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about getting the scheme of work set up. Now, don't worry about taking too much in here. As Craig mentioned, I will send you a guide with videos and help on how to choose the topic units and how to set up your scheme. But I just want to kind of make a few things clear. When you set up your scheme of work, it's not set in stone. You've still got flexibility. So you can extend units, shrink units, depending on how long it takes you. You can reorder topic units, and everything moves automatically for it. You're not kind of moving each one at a time. You can also adjust the number of days students have to complete quizzes, anything from 3 days through to 7 days. So the flexibility is all there for you. So once you've done that, all you'll need to do is assign the scheme of work. I just want to say a couple of things here as well. I really recommend renaming the scheme of work and also making sure you choose that quiz length, so the number of days students have to complete the quizzes. But then you can just assign that straight away to your class, and that's when you get the planning for error feature. So you've assigned it to your class, and we've got now really clear visibility on all of your quizzes. So you can see when they're going out, when they're due, and the students will be able to access them as well automatically based on your scheme. You can preview quizzes here, and you can edit the quiz dates. And we found that was a really desired feature for teachers. Let's say you've got one quiz, and actually maybe you've got sports day and it coincides with when you want it due. You may want to extend that to your next lesson that's on the Friday. So you do have that flexibility of editing that. And this is what that looks like. So you can change the start date, and you can change the end date, and you can also preview all of the questions here. So that's us trying to say, let's give you flexibility. Now, we don't want you to do that for every quiz, just for one or two as and when you need to, and you can use the scheme of work editor to kind of bulk change them. So just a quick reminder, as soon as your scheme of work is set up and assigned to your class, straight away you can head to our misconceptions tab, and you can see upcoming topics. You can see next week I'm teaching angles and parallel lines. What are the common misconceptions there? You get written misconceptions, and you can see the spread of the data as well. So you can jump straight in. As soon as your students have completed one quiz, you will then start to get your recent quizzes in this same misconceptions tab. And as soon as they've completed 4 or 5, you can start to look at the weakest topics and pull out your common misconceptions for your class there as well. So that's the first thing that I think is really valuable as soon as students have completed quizzes. But what else do you get? So you get results. This is obviously pretty standard. We're going to say we're going to give you the score. But that's really not what we're overly interested in. We're much more interested in the choice they've made, the explanations they've given, and the misconceptions they've exposed. You can download results here. So you can download the results and you see start and finish time. And you can get all of the results as the class or one quiz at a time. The choice is yours. As I mentioned, the misconceptions is where we're interested in. So let's say you've looked at a question, you've got some students who exposed misconception A. You can group those students together. You have the written explanation for that misconception here, and you can give those students feedback by grouping all of the students who expose that misconception together. And you can even give them a follow-up question. And the benefits of giving feedback through our platform, of course, it's going to save you time. You can give that personalized feedback very quickly. We give you the misconception they've uncovered. You can check that against their explanation if you choose to, and you can give them feedback. But you also know when they've read your feedback. So this is more insight that perhaps you wouldn't have got off pen and paper. Of course, you get it in a group activity, and absolutely it's fantastic then as well. But if you wanted them to try that question again, you can send that through our platform based on a question they've completed, and they can retry that question, and you can get those results as well. The last feature I'm going to talk through today for teachers is analytics. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, you do these 2 quizzes. How do I know what's happening between them? So quiz A, just as a reminder, straight after you finish a topic unit, quiz B 3 weeks later. You can now in this diagram start to understand retention of your students, and you can see that for every single topic that they've covered. So of course you can see that retention over time, but you've also got an overview of their ability for all topics. Okay, so just a couple more things for me to go through now. So students and parents very quickly. So for students, something that I think is really important is they instantly get their results. So they get their score, but more importantly, they get what they answered, their misconception, and an explanation as well to the correct answer. This, of course, helps the students realize straight away and understand a little bit more about their learning. Sometimes if you leave it too long, they become a little bit less engaged in that same topic. So really say, try and encourage them to review their answers straight away. They can access overdue quizzes. So, you know, if they say, oh, I missed that day, it's always there. They don't disappear. And we've also got the past quizzes where they can review at any time. And then probably the most important one is accessibility. So we've got a mobile app, so the students can get notifications when they've got homework set. They can get notifications when they've got homework due, but they can also, of course, complete it on an iPad, on their laptop, in school, whatever works best for your department. And then finally, parents. So for parents, we've been working with the Behavioural Insights team, looking at action for the parents to complete that are all research backed. So we're really looking for parents to build a habit with their child. So maybe a small action once or twice a week or every day, depending what the parent would like. It's not reliant on the parent knowing the child's maths. It's really about them just knowing how to talk to their child about their maths and what's going on in their education generally. Okay, so I'm now going to be sending you a couple of documents to really help you get up so you can walk away from this and say, you know, I know what I need to do. For all of you who haven't got your classes set up, that's not something I've spoken about too much today, but you've got from my perspective, 2 main options. There are more options, you can add them manually, but I'd really recommend either syncing your school's MIS, so for example, SIMS to our platform. That gives you automated class management, all your teachers, all your students, everything is set up for you. That does come at a cost, simply because it costs us money as well. So we just pass that cost on to you. And then the alternative option is uploading via an Excel file. Absolutely, works perfectly. You give us the class names, the students' details, and we just import those onto the platform. In those cases, teachers sign up themselves, and you would have the class management, so adjusting students, that kind of thing would be done manually. But it absolutely works really well for most schools. So that's, I wouldn't have a problem with that. So I'm just going to now send you a link. It's going to go to the top. It's going to be called class, and this is a button now with a document to help you get your classes set up. I'm going to be sending another one in a second, so I will have to get rid of that one. So this is, as I said, it's just a full guide on how to do the manual way, or get your MIS connected as well. So grab that. I'll give you another 5 seconds, and then I'm going to take that one away. Okay, I hope everybody's got that. If you don't, I'll talk you through ways that you can contact us and how you can actually get those documents yourself as well. So this one is around scheme and just generally the setup. So choosing your scheme of work and creating it is the first thing that your school will be doing. On the scheme side of it, creating the scheme of work should be done by one person per scheme. So we wouldn't want all 6 teachers who are teaching 6 different Year 7 classes to do their own. If they're all following the same scheme, you can create one and then you can share it with your colleagues. Then your colleague, when they assign it to their class, they've got control. They can adjust it for their class. But only one person should really be doing the setup stage. Okay, so there's now a scheme document coming to the top of your screen now. Something I'll say as well, if you log into eedi and you head to your scheme section and you've got tons of schemes there and you don't know what they are, I'd recommend deleting each of them, because they're likely that they could have been from last year or some previous time, and they wouldn't be necessarily bespoke and created by you for your scheme now. So it's can be quite useful just to kind of have a clean slate and start again, and then choose the scheme that we've worked with you to choose, or you've chosen yourself as well. So hopefully you've all got the scheme document. I'll leave that there for the next couple of minutes as well. So support, we've got live chat. So when you log on, if you go to our live chat, it'll be in the bottom right-hand side. You can ask us anything. To the bottom left-hand side, there's our help center, and that will take you through to all these documents I'm sharing. And we host webinars as well. So Craig and I host webinars. We do them on all different kinds of things, and I do have some coming up as well. And lastly, you can email us. So email hello@eedi.co.uk. We normally get back to you in about half an hour, unless it's late at night, maybe a bit longer. But do just shout out with any questions and support you need. And of course, Craig and I will cover any questions you've left for us today. But if we don't catch everything, or if you've got any further questions, you can go to our live chat.
Lovely, Iris. Lovely. Okay, so if, as Iris has said, if you've got any questions, feel free to bang them in the tab. We'll answer them now. We'll do our best. Or if you need time to digest this, watch the video again, read the guides, and then you want to contact Iris and her team via the chat function or the email, then feel free, because it is, 25 to 9, way past my bedtime here. For those of you in the south, I know things are just warming up here, but up north, I'm normally in bed by this stage. Okay, oh, the big one. Look at this, Iris. Gillian's coming. How is eedi different to diagnostic questions? Right, Iris, you take this one first. Go for it.
Absolutely. So as you know, diagnostic questions is really a crowdsourcing platform for diagnostic questions. And we kind of started adding lots of different features on it, and it became quite full and busy, I suppose. So what we did with eedi is we really wanted to find a platform that we only brought over content that we've partnered with providers, so the likes of Craig making himself, but of course AQA, White Rose, and also somewhere to bring structure into our platform. So we try and bake in regular quizzes, and we work around your scheme of work. Diagnostic questions, we find quite often people will do it for kind of ad hoc, maybe creating their own questions, sticking questions up on the board. It's not usually kind of baked into their curriculum as well as eedi is in such a regular basis.
That's great. Yeah, perfect explanation of that. And the important thing to say is that your login details for eedi and diagnostic questions work. It's the same login. If your kids are already on diagnostic questions, they're already on eedi. It's the same thing across. This is the beauty of it. If you set a quiz on diagnostic questions, you can analyze the data using the eedi insights and so on and so forth. I tend to use diagnostic questions when I want single questions to use in class, or I want to build a bespoke quiz for some reason. If I'm ever analyzing data, if I'm ever setting up a scheme of work, then I use eedi. Hope that makes sense. Great question, Gillian. Definitely needed asking. Anybody else got any other questions for us whilst we're here? Again, don't feel any pressure to. I'll tell you what, just whilst we're waiting around, just again to thank people for giving up their time on a school night, and thank you for keeping using the site and supporting it. We just want to try and make it as good as possible so it benefits you, your colleagues, and your students. So if you ever have any suggestions for what we could do, within reason, hopefully, we'll do our best to try and meet those. But again, if nobody else has any questions, then feel free to bomb off now. It's been really nice spending Wednesday evening with you all, and yeah, please get in contact with Iris and her team if you've got any questions, and watch out for other webinars throughout the year. Okay, so should we say bye, Iris? Should we wrap it up
let's
there?
do that.
Oh wait, whoa, hello, look at this. Just as we're about to go, oh, there we go. Loving the gangster chain, Craig. Where do I go now? Nick, I'd love this to be a gangster chain. It's actually a pair of headphones, but maybe this is why we've got onto them. So yeah, if you have any kind of Apple device, you get this free. But maybe, yeah, I mean, I definitely do have that gangster look about me generally, so I can see how you've made that assumption there. But yeah, just a pair of headphones, I'm afraid. And on that note, I think we definitely will say goodbye. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.